Hey, Biggie. That's big and small.
We're live, David. We're live. We're live on Facebook.
Right there.
Yes.
We're going to be live. All right, I'm going to just say 2 more hellos. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. Stick around.
Yes.
All right.
And I don't know that that's going to make it, but he told me to say hi to you and
Great.
we'll be here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
How are you? Doing great. She tells me we're live.
Yes.
Okay, I still got 2 minutes.
Yes.
My agenda is starting at 11:05. Great. I'm going to stick to my agenda. Diligent. Grant, did you say hi to Sean, who's behind you? Thanks for coming, Don. Yeah, plenty of seats over here. Things going okay? Good. My friend Grant told me he went to Spire, so we did 3 rounds yesterday. It was pretty fun. And I didn't really notice this time. He came down for the Masters tournament about a month ago. And his fight didn't happen. He's up my face. So he called me up today and all worked for 5 weeks. Come on down. I'm going to do a 10-minute and I'm going to turn over to Weston, district attorney from Carson City, who's the legislator. Wes learned some things fighting some of the homeless battles. And I wanted to share with everybody so you see some of the experiences he had in advance of the Grants Pass Supreme Court hearing, which is going to be heard on Monday, which is it's a banner case which is to determine homelessness in America. So trying to elevate kind of policy perspective for the community. This is Nicholas. These are clinical practice. And you know Biggie Smalls. It's 11:01. At 11:05 on the start. So everybody sit tight. At 12, I think food's coming.
11:15.
Oh, even better. So we're gonna have food in that room behind there, and I appreciate every part. Yeah, good. Give a chance.
All right.
Yeah, guys gonna be on the street talking. If you sit over there, you won't get seen.
Crack the whip, Red. Debbie watching the front? Daphne is? Okay, we got somebody in the front, some people. Nice. Welcome. Come on in. There's plenty of seats over here. Thanks for coming. I'm Dave. Oh, right on, Shauna. Thanks for coming. Nice to meet you, Doctor. We've talked on the phone. Yeah, appreciate you coming. Yeah, good to see you. Brother. Good, how are you? No, thanks for coming. It means a lot to me. You took time out of your day to... Good morning. Can you hear me? All right. Can you hear me on the left? All right. Thanks. I want to say welcome everyone for coming to the Vegas Stronger Public Policy Day. This is the first time we've done an event like this, and I expect during the event more people to come in, so we'll just roll with it. Vegas Stronger is a local 501c3 with a mission of reducing homelessness in our valley. I'm Dave Marlin. I'm the founder and a duly licensed counselor who works here at Vegas Stronger. I've been a long-time Vegas resident, and I've seen how homelessness has changed the complexion of our valley dramatically in the last decade. I fly very often in my personal and in my business life, and what happens is when I'm on planes flying to Vegas, I recognize a real change happening. I always used to be, and I'm always flying the opposite way. I'm flying home while everybody's flying here to Vegas. And as I talk to people on the plane, everyone always used to say, we're going to Las Vegas. It's the city of glitz and glamour. We're so excited to go have fun. You know, what happens here stays here. But what's been happening over the last 10 years is people are on the plane next to me, and they're telling me, yeah, we're going to Vegas. It's dirty. We're going to Vegas. We're going to smell weed out in front of the casinos. We're going to Vegas. There's going to be panhandling. There's going to be vagrants. Las Vegas is a very important and very expensive brand. And the brand of Las Vegas is getting hurt, I believe, more than we all recognize by the social condition of homelessness. Now, as a person with lived experience, I happen to be 18 years clean and sober. I haven't had a drink or a drug in 18 years. Thank you. You know, I recognize that the first and most important thing to myself and the 88 people who work at Vegas Stronger, the first and most important thing is to meet people where they are and to get them help so they could get clean and sober, so they could get housed. Nobody should not be sleeping in a bed. So they could get well and happy, and so they could get employed and self-supported. That is the mission for each person, each of the 88 little team members that work here at Vegas Stronger. So we recognize that we want to help folks who are out there, but we also recognize while they're there, it hurts our brand, and it hurts all of us if we want to go to parks, if we want to work in the streets, if we want to drive home and not have someone tap on our window at each stoplight we come to, because in most cases there's panhandlers looking for money to support a drug or alcohol habit. All right, that was my filibuster. It's now time to start. Welcome to the first Public Policy Day, an event we hope will grow with each annual occurrence. We want to start creating consensus among community, government, and business leaders related to the local homelessness continuum of care. We will hear from statewide leaders who are making change and setting the tone in this sector, including City of Sparks attorney Wes Duncan, also Karma Box Executive Director Grant Denton, and some local elected leaders. Some questions I'm going to ask each of you to focus on today. Is what should be the point of the unhoused continuum of care? Should it be to reduce homelessness towards the elimination of the social condition? Are we asking the right questions towards these goals? A more conservative Supreme Court is going to hear the Grant Pass case on Monday. And homeless policy in the United States potentially can change materially. And we need to be ready with appropriate policy and if necessary, additional infrastructure. In one more minute, I'm going to introduce Wes Duncan. Another question to think about is, as a region, how do we want to provide the highest standard of care? How do we want to provide the highest standard of care while avoiding promoting drug and homelessness, particularly in the tourism corridor, and attracting high-need individuals from other communities? I was fascinated when I read that a third of the homeless population in Seattle was homeless in another area, and recognized that Seattle's a good place to be unhoused. So people began hitchhiking, and Seattle's population of unhoused grew. With Las Vegas, we have about 65. Duncan. He's going to be on the monitor behind me. Wes Duncan is a Nevada attorney. He's a member of the Air Force Reserves and a prosecutor. He served as a member of the Nevada Assembly, and he's been the deputy district attorney in Washoe until being named city attorney for Sparks. He's championed causes of clean and safe streets, ending domestic violence, and protecting children. Please welcome Wes Duncan.
Hey, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you all today. And thank you for the introduction. Again, my name is Wes Duncan. I'm the city attorney up in Sparks. And so I wanted to chat a little bit about our approach in the city of Sparks to deal with issues centered around homelessness, and of course, mental health and those things. And, I think, I always try to start from a place where everyone can agree that our end goal is that we don't want to see homelessness in our community whatsoever. And we want to get to a place where we're reaching out in compassion to those that are in need, while also, as the chief prosecutor of the jurisdiction, while also recognizing that public health and public safety concerns are also important in trying to balance what to do. So a little bit about our approach in the city of Sparks. So a few years ago, we set up a team called our HOPE team. It's our Homeless Outreach Proactive Engagement Team. It's a 3-person team of law enforcement officers who are dedicated solely to working with the homeless within our community. And so in the city of Sparks, I tell people we start with a compassion-first approach. We are absolutely trying to build a rapport with our unhoused community. We're trying to connect them to services. And so we always say that the city of Sparks starts with an approach of compassion and trying to connect people to services. So over the last 3 years, according to our statistics within our city, we've actually been able to connect over 500 individuals to services within the community. Everything from substance abuse to mental health counseling, to transitional housing, to all of those sorts of things. And the interesting thing about our Hope team, right, is when you think about the role of a police officer and what they're doing, they're not only trying to keep the community safe, but in this role, they're engaging people. So we have, services where we're trying to connect people to get them, state identification or birth certificates, or get them connected to Medicaid, or get them connected to transitional housing, or get them connected to community court. We have a great partnership with our community court in Reno. We have Northern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services. We have a CARES campus in Washoe County that has 600 beds for emergency shelter purposes. And so we are continually trying to connect people to services first. And so we've been successful in being able to do that. But the question arises, of course, well, when you have made these efforts, and we will encounter some folks who are resistant to services, we'll encounter them 2, 3, 4 dozen times. We know them by name. We know their story. We've built a rapport with them, but there isn't a resistance to services. And so the question for a jurisdiction, right, especially in the Ninth Circuit, under Boise v. Martin, is how do we balance connecting people to services and compassion, but also with enforcing the law when a resistance is resulting in public health or public safety issues. And so our whole team came to our office and said, we need to be able to add a few other ordinances, and they're criminal in nature, to our toolbox to be able to try to incentivize our resistant folks in our community to doing that. So to that end, our office worked and drafted ordinances such as not being able to camp on the Truckee River within 1,000 feet, no obstructing sidewalks, no living within your cars or RVs, not being able to use generators and those type of things, and of course blocking traffic when you're soliciting donations and those kind of things. And so, in the city of Sparks, for example, in the year leading up to our ordinances, we had 120 warming fires that got out of control. I tell the story of a homeless man who was in a public right-of-way whose warming fire caught a homeowner's fence on fire, and the fence caught the home on the fire. And you can only imagine waking up in the middle of the night, your house on fire because of a warming fire that got out of control. We had 8 RV fires within our jurisdiction. We had a situation where our homeless were parking RVs, taking over a park. There was a hazmat situation. We're very unique in Washoe County in that our drinking water comes from the Truckee River. The Truckee River flows to a terminal lake for the Lake Pyramid Paiute tribe. That lake is solely within their reservation, and so we have those kind of considerations as well. And so what our jurisdiction has done, and I think we've done it right, is that we balance connecting people with services, but also enforcing the law. And you have to enforce the law when there has been a resistance to services that is causing public health and public safety issues. I know Grant Denton is going to be speaking to you on this panel as well, and he talks a lot about the loss of psychological drive, right? And the needs of people think they're helping folks, and sometimes they are, but oftentimes they're enabling folks not to be able to get back off their feet. And so as part of an overall strategy, and you can't arrest your way out of homelessness, you can't do all of those things, But as part of your strategy in dealing with homelessness, I'm a true believer that you have to be able to have the law enforcement tools to be able to enforce the law. You see cities across America, whether in our neighbor to the west, when you look at the Bay Area, places like Oakland, places like San Francisco, places like Los Angeles, if you don't enforce your law, you're going to have issues that I think incentivizes and will bring more homelessness. And so, you want to be able to do a bunch of different things, right, and use those services. Now, Washoe County is unique. Under the Boise v. Martin case, you can't arrest someone, just essentially, the case basically says you can't arrest someone who's homeless unless there is an open shelter bed for them, right? And so in our community, we have a 600-bed emergency shelter. The numbers run anywhere from every single night, there's 20 to 25 beds that are open. So our community has created the avenue to be able to not just throw their hands up, to be able to enforce criminal law where we need to. Single women, we have the Eddy House, which gives housing for anyone from 18 to 25 years old. And then, of course, the Community Corps program is a great program. In our jurisdiction, again, even if we are using the criminal justice system, we are trying to funnel folks who are resistant to services into the community court so that they can do all the things that we're trying to do, right? Get them an ID, get them on Medicaid, get them insured, to try to help them set up a plan for permanent, transitional and permanent housing. And so that's the approach that we've taken in Sparks. And as a region, Washoe County just passed a very, very similar ordinance to our ordinance in the city of Sparks. It's not just a city by city. I really believe that you have to, as a jurisdiction, have a strategic plan. Washoe has been trying to do that with our Harris campus. We are unique in the sense that if we have to make an arrest, there's typically a bed that's open. If you need to use the criminal justice system for that, we try not to utilize that. Again, it's always a last resort with the focus and the goal of getting people connected to service. But that's what we've been doing. There's also an effort led by a couple of our judges here in the 2nd Judicial District to use the Miami-Dade County model. And this model for criminal justice is essentially a diversion model. Those with severe mental illnesses, they're attempting to use this model. We've gotten all the law enforcement agencies, the judges, the district attorney's office, city attorney's offices, and other government actors together to try to see if we can create this diversion program that instead of going into the criminal justice system, they can divert you immediately for low-level crimes into inpatient or outpatient services. Miami implemented this over the last 2 decades. They've had tremendous success. The reality is, and I know it's true in Clark County, that the jail facility is the largest mental health provider, right? Probably Clark County Detention Center has got to be the largest mental health provider in the entire state. And so you just see the costs that are associated with that, and really people falling back into the system, and so thinking about ways to do things differently. So those are a few of the things that are happening in Washoe County and in the city of Sparks. But I really think, again, the model of meeting people in compassion, trying to connect them to services, and also, at the same time, knowing that to keep a community safe, to keep a community healthy, you have to be able to use the criminal justice system where it makes sense. I think is really a model, along with the other things that I just discussed, for cities moving forward. And we're certainly going to have some clarity. The Supreme Court has taken up, there's a case called Grants Pass that's out of Oregon that's going to give cities like ours, cities like Las Vegas, clarity on how they can enforce the law. And in some of these cities, and you all, I'm sure, have seen some of the pictures, just the public health, the public safety issues. We had 135 deaths in Washington County last year. I think one of those deaths is one too many. But you see the public health issues that are associated with these encampments. You see the danger that is posed to women and to children. And so hopefully the grants passed will give cities and jurisdictions more options to be able to protect their public health and public safety. And hopefully, as a state and from a federal perspective of pouring money and resources into emergency shelters, transitional housing, working in our public-private partnerships with our nonprofits and incentivizing results from the nonprofits, not just the amount of services that are being offered. And so that's kind of the lay of the land in the city of Sparks and the efforts that we're taking.
Want to field a question, Grant?
Yeah. Which one is it? One of these guys? I don't know. Does anybody have any questions for Wes? I'm sure there's questions. Raise your hand. Raise it. There you go.
Do you have any current statistics on the effectiveness of your efforts at this point?
Thank you for the question. So, yes, so our HOPE team has connected 500 individuals just in the city of Sparks. That's what we're talking about. To services, right? So those were folks that we found who were homeless, who were just living in our communities, whether in a tent or on the river or in their car. 500 folks have been connected to services with those results. And so in our community of about 120,000 people, we have about, just in Sparks, 25 to 35 folks who we find who are resistant, who we are trying to use the other tools that we have in order to hopefully get them to transition away from being homeless.
I got a question for you, Wes. Since you guys implemented that ordinance, how many individuals have you had to arrest?
So as of now, we have not had to use those ordinances yet, right? It's just another tool to be able to tell folks, hey, what you're doing is criminal in nature, and we still want to connect you to services. So according to our HOPE team, these ordinances have not been utilized yet, and that makes sense, right? Because again, our approach is to give our law enforcement officers all the tools that they need, while also trying to get folks funneled in, and especially our resistant population, funneled in to services to try to get them on their feet. A lot of people don't realize, and Grant can talk about this as well, is that there are folks with that. It's not every single person that's homeless is just completely down on their luck, and they're trying to pull their bootstraps out and get out. So some folks, there is a choice there, and it's hard for us to sort of understand that, but there's a choice there to remain homeless for a whole host of reasons. Could be from substance abuse to mental health issues, but you have to be able, I think, as a jurisdiction, especially in a constrained resource environment, right? You have to be able to use all of the resources that we have, especially in Washington County, where we have an emergency shelter where there's bedding available for our really resistant, for our folks who are really causing public health and safety issues. You got to be able to use those tools. We tell people, we had RVs that were trying to take over streets. They were pouring raw sewage into the street, which has been going straight into the drinking water, diesel fuel, refuse, garbage, all of these things that are, affecting public health and public safety, blocking of sidewalks that, of course, creates dangers for people that are just trying to access sidewalks. They have to divert into traffic and come back out. And we also, I think, what's sort of important to note is that, there's criticism sometimes that if you're, having these ordinances that deal with homelessness, that you're quote criminalizing, poverty. I tell people it's not a criminalization of poverty. It's a criminalization of the public health and public safety issues that come of a consequence of that. And so you certainly can't, as a community, allow raw sewage to be put into your streets or into your drinking water and doing those things. So I think people understand, and they understand the common sense. The other thing is the living in the vehicles. In our jurisdiction, we have a 48-hour time limit, right? So if I will often hear, well, what about the single mother maybe lost their home and they're living in their car, but they still have a job and they're taking their child to school. In that case, if you are just parked for 8 hours and you move your car the next day and you're trying to transition and do those things, like that ordinance isn't going to apply for you. We really were trying to tackle those cases where we were seeing people move in with their cars. They had no intention of their cars ever moving again, right? And trying to take over full streets, and then the consequences that happen with that. And the reality is that our whole team, if we're encountering you and you're living in your car and you're going to get connected to services, and that's exactly the type of person that we want to connect to services and use the criminal justice system as a last resort. So I think it makes sense, our approach. I don't, anyone who just knee-jerk says, oh, it's uncompassionate, is not really looking at the efforts that the city has been trying to do, working with our regional partners, but also having to enforce the law at the same time.
Is there any other questions for Wes?
I have a question. What's your approach to some of the jurisdictional areas where the homeless population, and maybe a crossover between the county, the city, or the Union Pacific Railroad? How are you guys approaching that from a barrier? It kind of seems like maybe a barrier in some cases to being able to enforce those ordinances that you passed.
I think I heard the question. So certainly, where there are encampments being set up on private property, you have to be able to work with the landowner to be able to, of course, go on their property and do those type of things. Regionally speaking, our city really led in passing these 6 new ordinances. The county followed. And Reno, of course, has some ordinances that they utilize as well. But you have to be able to have those relationships with your private property owners as well as the state, right? One thing that we see is that our homeless population is pretty intentional about where they camp. They understand where the different jurisdictional lines are. And will place themselves in places maybe that might be state property, right? Or might be before the ordinance county property, or they will try to go on to private property as well. We are still, even on the private property, if relationships, Union Pacific and others, of course, in Sparks, we're going on there. Again, the first approach is always going to be to try to connect them to services and get them to where they need to go.
I just want to speak to that real quick. If you look at the individual, if somebody's in a place where they're learning how to manipulate your system, you got a problem. These aren't the guys that are willing and able to get off the streets. These aren't the guys that are willing but unable. Willing but unable means mental and physical disabilities. These are workable folks. These are the guys, and shit, I was there at one time. Crap. I was there at one time. What we found across the board is that the railroad tracks are a really big issue, because if you look at when does a camp get addressed? Well, if it's in a residential neighborhood, it gets addressed relatively quick. If it's in a business neighborhood, right, not as quick, but quick. But the railroad tracks, and that's something different. And when it's on the railroad tracks, the logistics of being homeless will see to it that it takes a little longer for them to move you, right? Sometimes we get our camps moved in 6 months. Every 6 months, Union Pacific comes through, and we try to work with them. We have an MOU where we can trespass people. But it comes down to who's responsible and who's going to pay. Who's paying for the cleanup? Is it the city? And when we pay for the cleanup, we send the bill to Union Pacific and nothing. And you ask Union Pacific what the issue is, and they're like, well, we were here first. Well, it's our tracks, but it's your people. Clean up after your people. So these are issues that it's not just Nevada, it's Fresno. I just got back from Dallas. Dallas has the same issues. It's railroad tracks across the board. And the solution to that, what we were looking at is to see if they would fund us, if Union Pacific, and they wouldn't have to come out as much, and they wouldn't have to do the cleaning as much. Sometimes these cleanings are 90 to 120,000, depending on how many folks are there. Every time we clean up, the solution is what I think is that we work with Union Pacific for them to fund us railroad rangers. We have our river rangers in Reno, and our river stays tight. And it's just a constant working in the river. You know, the longer somebody is there, the more it belongs to them, and the harder it is to get them to move, and the more stuff they accumulate. So the bigger the mess is going to be. The average American produces 5 to 7 pounds of trash a week. The average homeless person produces upwards of 50 pounds of trash a week. Put that in perspective. Every week, without it having a magical bus to pass by your house and just take it from you, it adds up, and there's a cost associated with it. And so I believe the salute to the railroad answer is them leaning in just a little bit and working with the jurisdictions. This is everywhere. So, any other questions for Wes on outcomes or anything that he's seen?
I want to say from Vegas Stronger and the Las Vegas Valley, thank you very much for spending this time with us to share the information you've learned, because you're facing the same addressed issues that we're facing, and here they may be a little bigger scale. So thank you.
Yep, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Wes.
Grant, why don't you take the podium? Stopped. Or do you want me to introduce you?
Do you want to introduce myself?
Yeah, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey! Oh. All right, everybody, it's me.
So I'm Grant Denton. I'm the founder of the Karma Box project. The Karma Box project was founded in 2018. It was just a grassroots community effort where I was working at a methadone clinic and got the folks at the clinic, the patients, to start building these little library boxes. And we put these library boxes up, we paint them, and we put non-perishable food, hygiene items, things like that in them for anybody that needed, they could grab out of it. So it was a give and take, reciprocal box, and it really blew up throughout the community. And then from there I worked at the shelter and was the operations manager of the Business Improvement District. And then from there I started my own nonprofit doing outreach along the Truckee River. When you do this job where you're in the trenches working with this population, there's about a burnout of about 2 years. Because when you work with people, you gotta love people, right? You must. And they tell you to have boundaries, but you will take it home. You'll take it home and you dream about these folks and solutions. And when somebody fails, you fail a little bit. When somebody passes, when people pass, a little bit of you dies. So in order to stay in this, you got to be committed to the bigger picture, to the end game. When you look at homelessness, up into this point, the solution for what's the problem with homelessness? Is it the optics problem? It just looks like crap? Well then cool, let's move them somewhere. Let's warehouse them. But then homelessness is growing. Homelessness is growing. And why is homelessness growing? Well, because you have 2 lines feeding it and you have 1 line out. Right? If we're successful homeless providers, we're going to take somebody from a condition of homelessness and move them into a condition of poverty. When you're in a condition of poverty, the margin for error is very slim. So people often, even the best performing people, even if you're the best performing person, you just miss 1 or 2 days sick, and if you're counting on that check, you could come right back. And so we have our recidivism that comes back, and then we also have new homelessness that comes back. There's a lot of work to do, and so we can get into all the way down the river, we can get into all the way up the river. Part of the up the river of my story was that I spent 9 years on these streets, homeless and addicted to heroin and meth, in and out of the system, in and out of the system. I was, every time I come here, I always drive the streets that I used to run. You ever done some stuff like that? right? But you need to feel that. I always think it's important to remember where we came from, right? And remember how we got here, because this also helps facilitate getting other people out, right? I'm a subject matter expert on drug addiction and homelessness, but just my drug addiction and my homelessness. What helps me help people is understanding other people and how they get out. I wanted to make a note like that of catalysts, right? There's two sides to this argument. You know, when you're saving somebody from drowning, they don't ask you who you voted for or who you prayed to. Save me, right? And we turn it into this weird dig because, well, I don't know, I'm not going to give it because then you get into really weird stuff. But, you know, there's the far right. This is true, right? That's the bootstraps approach. Get off drugs. Get a job. But that works 0% of the time. Then there's a far left that's like, love them till they figure it out. And that works 0% of the time. You good? Right? You can't love somebody to life, but you can sure love somebody to death. And that's a fact. I promise you, when I was homeless and addicted, the best ideas that I could come up with got me homeless and addicted. I woke up, had some great ideas, and I stayed in the same place. We need direction, we need a nudge, so the solution is a radical middle. And radical middles come with what we call in this industry, the dance. If you want to work with people, you got to have people. How do you have people? How do you nudge people off the streets? When I say the dance, I mean where I lead a little bit, and then you lead a little bit. And I lead a little bit, and you lead a little bit. And it takes work, and it's based on the individual. It's based on who you're working with. You better know your people. Sometimes it takes, Dave and I were talking about this other day, it takes 2 to 6 months before they tell you the truth. Because as a survival mechanism, we learn how to manipulate. We learn how to tell stories, and we hold space for that. We know this. When I was on the streets, I had an okey-doke probation officer. Of course I'm on probation. I had a $150 a day habit. And I didn't have any income. So how do I support that? I might break some laws. Am I a bad person? No. But I was on the other end of the law, which, if you look at it, kind of saved me. To this point, I'm not saying you should break the law. You know, don't go and tell them, you should break some laws, man. Yeah, bad idea. But when I was in and out of the system, right, I just became accustomed to the system. Because drug addiction is just an identity crisis. It's just an identity crisis, right? The drugs do their job. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. Every time I got high, every time I shot up, I got high, and every time I drank, I got drunk. It did its job. The problem was me. It was a maladaptive response to the world around me. Didn't know how to respond. And sometimes to correct this, you got to be pulled out of the element. It's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame. So what's going to knock you out of the frame? There's catalysts to things. And I remember I was in and out. I was going to my probation officers once a month, right down the street to Bonanza. Drove by it the other day too. Drove in the parking lot and everything. I remember going there, and I would get high to go there because that was normal for me. We all have different ideas of what normal is. When you're a drug addict, it's pretty wild, right? And I remember I had what we call an okey-doke PO, okey-doke probation officer. Where you come in, he's like, "Hey Grant, man, you got a job?" I'm like, I'm very working a lot. He's like, "You still living at your mom's house?" My mom would kick me out. She had a protection order against me. He feels it, I'm like, "Yes, my mom's doing fine. She's really helping." "Grant, are you getting high?" "No, drugs are so bad, sir." He just okey-doked me and checked me out. He's like, "All right, man," and I'm out and I'm back to the same old gig. Well, one day I showed up and I write my name on the thing, and I'm here for officer. I'm not gonna say his name. Y'all might know him. Officer so and so. And when they looked, they're like, "Oh no, he don't work here no more. You got Officer Gallagher." I'm like, "Gallagher? Who's got?" And you know, who's ever been to the PNP office? When that door opens, everybody's like the kids at the daycare. They think it's their parents. So the door opens and like, "Is it me? Is it me?" And then right when the door opened for me, a UA cup came out first. A UA cup, urine analysis. He's about to give me a drug test. I was like, he was like, "Damn it, follow me." I'm like, "Damn it." And so we went in there. I'm trying to slow play him. I'm like, "Man, I don't know if I can pee. I just peed on the way over here, man. I don't know. You want to do it tomorrow? I'll set a schedule and see if we can show up tomorrow." And he's like, "Grant, I get paid to do this. I'm going to wait." I get paid to stand there and look at you. So I was like, I resigned to what was going to happen, and I peed in the cup and lit that whole panel up. Lit it up. He's like, clap him up and put me in cuffs, took me to jail. I hated this man. I write stories about him. Write Gallagher. I couldn't stand Gallagher until I had a paradigm shift. Part of this paradigm shift was understanding my role and how I got to where I was. Understanding the impact that I had on the world around me. I remember when I got out, I asked my mentor, I said, why is it that guys in programs do really good for the program, and then when the program's over, they come back to the streets, or they fail again, or they get high, or they die. They get back to prison. And she says it's a motivation, right? What motivates these people is fear. You're afraid to go to prison. You're afraid to go to jail. Fear is the strongest motivation, but it only lasts as long as the threat. What you need is growth motivation. While you're in this fear motivation, you got to figure out what's bigger than you. What is going to motivate you to stay clean and that's outside of serving you. And I was panicking for about 8 months. And about 8 months left of the program, I was panicking, like trying to find this growth motivation, reading inspirational books and all the things. And my mentor told me that you should ask somebody close to you their version of your story. And it had to be my mom. So I asked my mom her version of my story, and in this 2-hour sitting, one of the things she told me was about my overdose. And my version of the overdose was, I go to my friend B's house, I get high. B didn't know that I shot up. She just thought I was weird. Something's wrong with him. Can't put my finger on it. But there's something wrong, and I overdosed. I shot up in her bathroom, and I woke up 4 days later in the hospital. And I asked the people in the hospital what happened. They're like, you overdosed. And I'm like, really? Okay, and I called my mom on the phone. Now, the worse my life got, the worse my mom did, the worse of a parent she was, because I needed someone else to punish for what was happening to me. I called my mom, and she doesn't answer the phone, and I left a message being like, Mom, you do this every time. Every time you do this. You're never there for me. You're there for TJ, JD, Wade, Marco. You're never there for me. I need you now, Mom, and you ain't here. And I went and told her what a terrible mom she was, and I hung up the phone. Her version of my story is that B calls her, says I'm not gonna make it, and that I probably won't make it. I overdose, and my mom shows up to the hospital for 3 days, not knowing if her son's gonna die or not. Who's got kids? Feel that, and eventually, when she heard that I would be okay, she finally left. When she left, she sees me calling. She won't answer the phone because she knows I'm gonna ask for something, and she doesn't want to enable me. And I leave her that message. That knocked me out of the frame, in addition to being pulled out, and that was what gave me my growth motivation. What we see is that is understanding the impact that we have on the world around us. People, and I want to look at it like this, is the argument for, and when we go into this grants pass thing, the argument for the grants pass is the same argument that we used to have. I was doing outreach underneath the Wells Bridge in Reno. We had about 400 campers there. We call them non-recreational campers. We had about 400 folks there, and we were trying to move these folks from the river to the shelter. And people didn't want to go because they'd been in, remember Shelter in Place from CDC? People didn't want to go because they were left alone for so long. And they were really putting up a fight. And then the advocates were really putting up a fight. They were picketing outside of City Hall. And the argument was that it's inhumane to displace people. It's inhumane to move folks. Now I understand the logistics if you're a case manager. If you're working with somebody on getting out and they move the camp, that makes it difficult, right? It makes it difficult when people are displaced. But usually if you're working with folks, you know exactly where they're going. The argument was that it's inhumane. They picket, say it's inhumane, stop the sweeps, stop the sweeps. But the problem is, if you're going to make it about inhumanity, then you have to put it up against the inhumanity of living in a camp. What happens in a camp? I don't know if anybody's ever heard of play to stay, but sometimes, most of the time, the women don't keep the tents. In order to get a tent or some sort of shelter, you have to exchange sexual favors. And then the abuse. And then the assault, and the battery, and the lighting, the heating. There's the fires that happened every day out there. Very few of them were heating fires, and more of them were conflict resolution fires. Fires of love. You take my stuff, I'm burning you down. That's it. And so there's and when it comes to the argument, and so like that's what my question then. Like if you think that it's more inhumane to move the camp or to keep momentum in the camp than it is to clear the camp, then by all means keep picketing. If you want to keep this camp, if you're okay with that inhumanity, by all means keep picketing. Or go out and manage the behavior. And managing the behavior takes a lot more. Right? You might as well just get them in the treatment. The other argument, like when you're talking about the anti-camping laws, which I, as being in this field, being there, understanding how it goes, and it's hard to, like, when you talk about the homeless population, you can't broad stroke because there's so many different variables. You have people that are fleeing domestic violence. You have your new to homeless. You have your addicted. Your developmentally disabled. Folks with mental illnesses, co-occurring, all of the things, and then the seniors that are priced out of their benefits. They just can't perform anymore. So you have all these things in there. So it's difficult to broad stroke it. But the argument is for the anti-camping is that it's that writing someone a ticket, which you see happens very few, actually no time. It hasn't happened yet, it's just teeth. But writing someone a ticket is cruel and unusual punishment. This morning I was talking to Dave and I looked up cruel and unusual punishment, because if putting someone in jail is cruel and unusual punishment, then you gotta stop writing traffic tickets, because I went to jail for a traffic ticket once and that was cruel. Not that unusual, but you gotta define. For speeding, you want to be cruel. So you got to define what is cruel and unusual punishment. And overarching, the definition was punishment that is considered unacceptable due to the pain, the suffering, and the humiliation. Pain, suffering, and humiliation. So who's cruel and unusual? Is it the folks that are nudging someone to better themselves, nudging someone out of the frame? Or is it the folks that want to leave them there? And that's my argument. Thank you. Yeah. You just grab my documents here.
The logistics at 12 o'clock in 9 minutes. I'm going to move some chairs up here, and I'm going to ask Jim Seabach and Brian Newton to come up here, and we're going to kind of have a panel discussion. That'll be in 9 minutes. What I'm going to do right now is quickly recognize some team members that are here. I'm going to start in asking Nicholas Neubauer, the clinical director at Vegas Stronger, to wave. Nicholas is an LCSW who's helped thousands of people in Las Vegas, and he meets with the 50 clinicians that work at Vegas Stronger on a regular basis. We're very grateful for Nicholas. I want to ask, I don't see Debbie right now, but I'm going to ask John Seelan to wave. John Seelan is our executive director. He's a lawyer. He doesn't mind if I out him. He's also a person with lived experience in long-term recovery. A cool story I love about John is how he and I helped found Vegas Stronger about 7 years ago. He was the CEO of Las Vegas Recovery Center. I was the CEO of Solutions Recovery, the two of the biggest recovery centers in the state. And we had both, they were both for-profit companies, and we had met for a coffee, and we talked about how important it was to reframe substance use disorder treatment, co-occurring treatment, to be done by a nonprofit. And that it was really important because people with substance use disorders, and I don't know if you know someone with a substance use disorder, but they're always looking very careful, not at themselves, but what's your angle? why are you asking me to get into treatment? How much are you getting? And thinking about themselves, and like, well, we'd like to talk about your fentanyl dependence. That is a tertiary issue for them. So John and I agreed that it was necessary for evidence-based, effective substance use disorder treatment to be delivered, that it needed to be delivered by a nonprofit vehicle, but that just because Las Vegas Recovery Center had things like equine therapy and yoga and fitness instructors and provided food and clothing for clients who need it, and art therapy and music therapy and motivational interviewing and cognitive behavioral therapy, that our unhoused community, our most underserved community, they deserved that same level of treatment. And what we found in the 6 years of Vegas Stronger is that we actually get better outcomes here at Vegas Stronger providing those services than we did when we offered them to I called it the kids from Summerlin and from Seven Hills. That our clients needed counseling services more and responded better to them. So I love you, John Seelan, and thanks for being here. I'm going to specifically express my gratitude to Debbie Levitt. Debbie is the president of Vegas Stronger. Debbie is a black belt in both enabling and in developing healthy boundaries. And unfortunately, as a fellow codependent, we were beaten. We were beaten into submission to development of healthy boundaries. I'm grateful that Debbie orchestrates every client who comes in, and we have 60 human beings every week walking that golden door. And we help get them into treatment. And we have an average length of stay for some of our managed care folks of 133 days in outpatient treatment. And for our chronically unhoused folks, to me, that's still too short. That these people need therapy over a period of time to get well, to move from Grant's picture frame. But part of the reason we have such amazing results is due to immediate access. They get treatment the same day. Integrated care. We integrate them with psychiatry, medication-assisted treatment, as well as counseling, peer support, case management, and longer treatment durations. Now, when I talked about, and I heard this in the earlier discussion, I recently wrote an article on outputs versus outcomes. And is Brandon around? Brandon actually teed me up on this. He's not, but tell him I give him a shout out. Now, so many times in homeless services, we focus on how many meals did you hand out? How many people did you give a house to? How many people did you give overdose kits to? How many people did you feed? Versus how many people got well? How many people got off the street? How many people got employed? Outputs versus outcomes. And Vegas Stronger has been outcomes driven since our inception. And with this, I'm going to do a shout out to John Stu. He's been thrilled and looking forward to this. John Stu, can you stand up? John Stu, can you just do a minute or two and tell them what you do here?
Sure. I didn't know I'd be speaking today.
I know.
My attire. So, as you know, I didn't plan to do this. I'm speaking today. I'm the outcomes guy here. So I have people that talk to every single client when they come in, ask them baseline questions basically about their history. Not only just their drug history, their life history, where they're living, what's their employment status, how well are you, what do you think about yourself? And then we track people as we go along in the program, asking questions based on our 13 elements of sobriety. So, how much exercise do you get? How are you eating? How many AA or NA meetings are you going to? And we track this every week that they're in the program. And then, 6 weeks after they're admitted, whether they're still here or not, we're going to find them and ask the exact same questions we do when they finish. How are you doing? Where are you living? Are you working? What's your drug use? And what we see here is pretty significant results for people that come in. If you graduate our program, we have shown that you are having an 87% chance of being drug-free 6 months later, which is really impressive.
Yeah. Did you just say 87%?
87%. Wow. And if you exclude THC, it's actually 96%. So we have seen some really significant results for people that have come in. Most of our clients that come in don't have much going for them. What we try to do is provide them not just a free house or not just free food, but the pathway to get sober and say, if you do this, we can get you back on the right track and try to give you the treatment that you need. So that's essentially what I do here, and thank you very much for listening.
Can I ask some of the clinicians from Vegas Strong, the licensed clinicians, could you stand up and wave? No? They want to stand up and wave? All right. Well, thanks very much for being here. We love our clinical team. The clinical team, that's the core of Vegas Stronger. If people say, what's Vegas Stronger? What's Vegas Stronger is clinically run. We're clinically driven. The 50 counselors run what we do. We're essentially a counseling agency. We happen to have 5 prescribers who help support them and their clients. We happen to have 8 case managers who help make this a coordinated entry site and track every patient who comes into HMIS and develop case management plans for them and help make sure they get housed, that they get employed, that their parakeet gets fed while they're in detox, and all of their needs. We also have 8 outreach folks. The 2 rock stars of the outreach team are on either side, Alex and Darlene. Give a round of applause for the 2 of them. Thank you. Now, I mentioned that 60 of God's kids walk in our golden door every week. I want to tell you that just about none of them walk in willingly saying, you know what, I really need to stop using meth. Let me get in here. But what happens is these 2 angels do interventions, develop connections with them, and help coax them to come in here and get help. And when anyone do, they start with a biopsychosocial assessment that they get the same day they walk in. So thank you, Darlene and Alex. I'm grateful to have worked with each of you for over a dozen years and to be sharing a path of recovery. Is food here yet?
Yes.
Food's here? All right. So now, do we have a plan? All right. So we have P.F. Chang's for 50 people in this room?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm thinking we're going to do is we're going to all grab plates, and then I'm going to ask 3 of our panelists to come up here, and we're going to have some open discussions with Jim Seebach, who spent 23 years in the Metropolitan Police Department before being elected to represent Ward 1 in Henderson. Where we also have Brian Newton, who represents Ward 1 in the city of Las Vegas and is the mayor pro tem. And we're going to ask Grant to come back up and sit up here as well. All right, so let's grab some food, and then in, what do you think, 5 minutes or 10 minutes should we start? 10. 10 minutes we'll start. Hey, hold on.
Please go. Just trying to get out of everybody's way.
Outreach is one, it's providing food to people in the camps, that's something else. Any introductions, I appreciate it. All right. All right, great. I encourage you, please come in and come take a tour and see what we do. Yeah, no, that's what I want to say to the churches, to the folks in the house. Understand that this is a community place. This is a place of love, this is a place of hope. Yeah, maybe some pastoral counseling. We're not going to 5 psychiatric prescribers. We're not going to 50 licensed therapists.
Can I ask that the two council men please make their way up here? And can I ask everybody to try to come back and grab your seats? I really appreciate everybody taking 2 hours out of their schedule to come to talk about homelessness. So thank you everybody for coming. I'm so grateful to have two of our city leaders here today, and look forward to having some robust discussion. I'm sure that a major part of their constituent calls are how to address homeless camps and homelessness in their community. So I'm grateful that they will have very specific perspectives on our homelessness crisis. Before I turn it over to Grant to MC this, I'm going to just tell a recent epiphany that I had. I'm so grateful that Clark County had the foresight to contract with us to be able to provide counseling, case management, medication-assisted treatment to anyone who's coming out of CCDC who needs it. What I've been very surprised about is that about 85% of the people who are going to jail have a drug addiction or a mental health issue. And I was similarly surprised to find out that our homeless community, that 85% of them had a mental illness or a substance use disorder. Actually, more than that. So I was just surprised that those two populations had a very similar incidence of substance use disorders. And to me, that's sort of my calling. I'm an expert at treating substance use disorders. It's what I'm licensed by the state to do. It's what my doctorate is in. And it's what my 18 years being clean and sober have supported me in doing. So I guess I did a roundabout thank you very much for having the foresight to connect us so people coming out who are on medication-assisted treatment could get immediately connected to medication-assisted treatment, because that's so thank you, Clark County. And with that, I'm going to slip a mic to Grant.
Can you hear me?
I'm not going to slip a mic to Grant.
All right, so the first question for the panel is, what is the appropriate role of civil society opposed to government and the broader community in relation to reducing homelessness?
All right, yeah. So first, before I answer it, just a quick introduction. My name is Jim Seebach. I'm a city councilman here in Henderson. I know you gave me a little bit, I was just elected about a year ago. Prior to that, I worked for 30 years at Las Vegas Metro through all ranks. So through that time, I was over a homeless outreach team. We helped stand up a behavioral health unit. I was the chief in charge of our jail. And so I was very keenly aware of the issues that are being seen here and what is occurring out in Henderson. And so through that, started work with the county and also leveraging what Henderson is doing through their mobile crisis intervention team, their homeless response teams, to their campaigns on fentanyl, which by the way, we have some flyers and pamphlets to pass out on that. But as far as the question, the role for civil society, so as you, I was actually listening to. There's so much. The civil society, the quick answer is this. First of all, it has to be coming from everybody but the government. It should come from your family. It should come from your nonprofits. It should come from your faith. It should come from your foundations. But specifically, as you were saying earlier, you look at, what are the pipelines to homelessness, right? So whether it's domestic abuse, substance abuse, behavioral health, the economy, and all these different factors. And so in a civil society, we would be treating not only the symptoms, but also the pipeline how to get there. In other words, you got to, start addressing the affordable housing to make sure people don't continue this cycle and continue to grow the problem. We need to be good at a lot of things, but we still need to hit the mark and be great at a few and to continue to chip away. So in a civil society, those nonprofits, those faith-based groups, those programs not only need to be present, but they have to be accessible, and the people who are involved needs to know who to call. Because think about it, if you had a family member right now, maybe a lot of people in this room know, but if you take just someone you went to school with, someone you work with elsewhere, and they all of a sudden came and says, my significant other, my daughter, my brother is addicted, or my brother has a behavior, where do you refer them to? Where's that one-stop shop event? And this is the best place because it is all dependent upon the situation in which they're in. And so in a civil society, those outreach and those mechanisms would be clear to people, it would be relevant, it would be, evident, and we would start doing that for that. And then, just make sure I made some notes on this. Go ahead, sorry, I think I lost my place there. So, and then, sorry, to close it out, yeah, so the last thing you want is the government to get involved on a lot of these things. The government should play a policy, but in a civil society, to your question, the community should have the resources to take care of its own. I'm a big advocate of, hey, sometimes there's going to be consequences for actions, so I'm never going to say there's not an appropriate place for the criminal justice system. But in a civil society, these things that people are going through are not usually criminal in nature. They're personal crises in their lives, and they need to have society, a civil society, being there to support them, that we have those mechanisms, we have those means to wrap around them to prevent them from going down that downward spiral.
Okay. So I'm Brian Houston. I represent the city of Las Vegas, and so my answer is not going to be a whole lot different, but I want to point out a couple of things that I just think about. Is one, I'm not an expert in drug and alcohol recovery or symptoms or anything really. What I've had is experience and exposure working in government, and so at the city of Las Vegas, I would try to point out to people is that we're a creature of the state of Nevada. The state of Nevada dictates what we can and what we can't do. The county has specific rules, the local governments have specific rules. I think as a society, we've somewhat failed in making sure elected officials are doing what they're supposed to be doing, providing for everybody. And so we don't have the system set up in Nevada to serve people the way they need to be served right now. And I think at least at the city, and I think this at the county, and Henderson is coming along, is that we're doing our best to keep up with the challenges that we're experiencing. So right now, our primary response is law enforcement and fire and rescue, which means that the nonprofit sector is going to have to step up and support where local governments and county governments just can't do it with law enforcement and fire and rescue alone. It's just not adequate and it's not appropriate. And so the civil society is a cooperation between government and nonprofit agencies. But the community at large, the citizens who government is responsible to, needs to demand that. They need to make sure that the legislature is appropriately funded, is appropriately giving direction to local government. They need to make sure that elected officials along the way know that that's a priority for them. That's where it's a challenge, is because everybody out there has a very different priority. And so it's our job as elected officials to be as respectful and resourceful as possible to meet the demands of everybody in the best way that we know how. Right now, I would suggest that as a society in Nevada, I think we're failing a lot of people because we just weren't set up to deal with some of the challenges that we're currently experiencing. We have a lot to do to catch up, and I think we're working on that, and that's going to be a balance between government and nonprofit and a general understanding of the citizens around us.
So when it comes to this this issue, there's 4 responsible parties, and we all are going wrong. There's the government, there's the agencies, there's the public, and then there's the homeless. We all have a role. The government's role is, who do we fund, right? Who do we fund? Where the government goes wrong is this homeless industrial complex that we hear about. Agency's role is, how do we help? How do we help? There's 3 ways you can help somebody. You can help them survive, which is a jacket when you're cold, food when you're hungry, shoes when you need shoes. You can help them stabilize, which is get them into a house, help them get into a house, or you can help them, and you can help them thrive, which is keep the house. Now, we've set up a system where we take somebody from this condition, which is survive, and put them in a stabilized condition without introducing thrive. Now, if you look at this in a housing perspective, right, when it comes to housing, if someone gets a house and loses a house, and then gets a house and loses the house, get the house, lose the house, eventually, after you get it and lose it and get it and lose it so many times, it makes more sense for the individual to be successfully homeless than it does to suck at being housed. And so, in a way, agencies without proper, when is our job done? Is it done when you get them in the house? Is it done when you teach them to keep it? Is it done when you have the support? So we have to identify when is our job done and how we properly help somebody not to just get the things, but keep the things. When it comes to the public, where the public goes wrong is also how they help. We hand out all the meals. I got a question, how many sandwiches does it take to get someone off the street? Sandwiches don't get people off the street. And in most situations, when you're serving food on the streets, you're not solving the homeless, or you're not solving the food insecurities problem, you're solving the food options problem. Which is cool, but it's not, we're not really moving towards getting folks off the street. A lot of people will ask, should I give money at the off-ramp of the freeway? Well, the question is, what are you trying to help? You're trying to help this person do what? You're trying to help them get off the streets? Because that $5 ain't getting them off the streets. Right? Some people look at it like, well, they are working, they're standing there holding a sign, but there's no exchange of goods or services. And why do people stand on the corner? Because it works. Who makes it work? Us. What would happen if nobody gave food or money? Would they starve? Nah, they come to us. We need them to come to us. It's difficult to work with people that you don't have. And also think about the opportunity cost of keeping someone on a corner who could have otherwise been out doing something else. So where we fail as the public is how we help, and it's important that we carry a narrative that the homeless people are capable, the folks that are living on the street are capable. A lot of people will try to convince the homeless that the system is broken. The system's keeping you down. Yeah, the system's broken. It's been broken. Have we ever operated in a system that wasn't? And so the gig is that we don't convince people on the street that the world is more against them than they already feel like it is. It's a narrative that we carry to let them know that they have a role and that they are capable of getting off. That's it. Second question. How has your agency spent, or how do you plan to spend its share of opioid settlement funds? Okay, third question. Dave, do you?
Yes.
How do you plan to spend your opioid settlement funds? Or do you want to move to the third question? Let's move to the third question. In your experience, what is the right balance between law enforcement?
I'm going to take that question.
Okay.
And you taught me this one. Anybody here clean and sober? Anybody here get clean and sober by going to treatment? Anybody here get clean and sober because somebody gave you a house? So to me, when we think about opioid settlement dollars and recognize we're talking about people with an opiate use disorder, the one evidence-based way to help get them well is by providing evidence-based behavioral health care treatment. So to me, I would just hope that if a government, any agency, state, city, Henderson, Vegas, county, was deploying opiate dollars, they would have a material portion of it for treatment for opiate use disorders. Thanks for letting me take that.
Right on, brother. 3, in your experience, and this is what is the right balance between law enforcement and supportive services to help direct people into the social safety net?
I can speak to this a little bit. So I'll give you a crime answer, and then I'm going to answer that a little more directly. So first of all, it's a team approach. I worked in this valley doing policing for over 30 years. And years ago, there used to be a neighborhood that when everyone would ask an officer, hey, what's the worst neighborhood for crime? What's the worst area? And they would say West Las Vegas, West Las Vegas. And then we had some leaders come into that area from both the police department and the community and said something's got to change. And then it was under Sheriff Mayhill where he really took it up to another level and said, you know what, we're going to take this area, call it Safe Village, and we're going to bring in community partners and the police, and together we're going to address some of the core issues of what's affecting the crime in this area. And fast forward now, because that went on for 15 years, fast forward now, if someone asks, hey, what are the worst areas of crime? They don't mention West Las Vegas till like 3 or 4 down as far as different neighborhoods, because it worked. In other words, it's a team approach. It is possible to make a dent in a very difficult topic. So back to law enforcement's role in addressing homelessness and everything else, it's still that team approach. You're going to need the government policies and everything else like that, but from a law enforcement specific point of view, is still making sure there's intervention opportunities to intervene before they enter the criminal justice system, and if they do enter the criminal justice system, because there are going to be sometimes consequences, then you still got, I'm a fan of diversion courts, I'm a fan of what works, I am a fan of what evidence-based solutions show. But I think one of the biggest opportunities we have actually is when people are in custody. They are forced to some regard to get clean, depending on how long they're there, and start getting some treatment or some options. And so we're missing an opportunity to really reach people as they exit the county jail or a city jail. And so being at the ready to engage them, because that's when their mind is, for the most part, clear than when they came in. And so we have to look at those different types of programs that work, those different programs that engage. But again, as I say, there's so much different opportunities to intervene before it goes to that criminal justice standpoint. So I think the police are a big part of that solution, just like they work for violent crime in that neighborhood. They can be a big part of the collaborative effort, because it's not one nonprofit and it's not one government entity. It's a little bit of everybody, but we have evidence to show we can do that and we can make an impact.
Awesome.
I would suggest, I think we're putting too much emphasis on police. I think we need more nonprofits out working with the community, and specifically around homelessness. And the former police officer may correct me, but I do a lot of ride-alongs. If anyone's noticed, the cops out in the streets right now, they're all like 20 to 25 years old. They're very, very young. We lost a lot of police officers over COVID. They all retired. So you have these 25-year-olds that came into policing because they wanted to catch bad guys, they wanted to go after bank robbers, they wanted to stop crime, and now we're putting them in a position where they have to go and work on encampments and cleanups. They don't want to be there. I haven't seen one single officer raise their hand saying, I want to be out there cleaning up an encampment next to a social service agency or a city or a county. They're being taken away from what their dream was, their desire to grow up and be a law enforcement professional. Now they're supporting people who they're not breaking bad crimes, they're not doing terrible things. And so I think we've just missed the mark as probably a society across the country, but here in Las Vegas, we're putting police in positions they don't want to be in, that they're not the most effective. We need more people who have experience working with homeless and people who have experience working with drug and alcohol addiction, helping to work on those encampments, helping to work on people who are on the streets, and putting police back to catching criminals.
Yeah, because the police become that safety net to where it's a catch-all, to where they're having to engage with behavioral health people, they're having to engage in the homeless crime. So we're absolutely right. And then, like when I worked at jail, 1/3 of all the people at the Clark County Detention Center were on some type of behavioral health medication or in need of it. And so it's a big need that they're having to engage when there's so much nonprofit, there's so much foundations, there's so many nonprofits that can really make a dent in that can unburden the police from having to take some of that responsibility.
And it's not just police, it's fire department as well, because on every time they see someone down on the ground, the police are calling a fire department or an ambulance. And if you're on the fire department, lots of ride-alongs with firefighters, they're 20 to 27 years old, they're getting burnt out pretty quickly because they don't want to be responding to non-emergent calls. They want to go put out fires, they want to go to cardiac arrest, and instead they're being told to watch a cleanup.
And then that affects our ERs and the number of people taking up room in there.
Yeah, they have other successful. So what would the answer be? So the allow cops to be cops, and then because the police are reactive, right? When they call, then they come. And so how do you be proactive? There's in Fresno they have a heart team. Fresno has I think somewhere around 4,000 homeless out there. Similar here, maybe a little bit less. But they have a heart team where there's police officers that are specific, a team of 4 that are specific just to this population, and they're not voluntold. You get a problem when it's voluntold. But but they have a team that's just dedicated for that. It's called the Heart Team, and it's code enforcement, sanitation, and they have an outreach team. That's the proactive part of it. That's 40 outreach 40 outreach people, workers. Thank you. Humans, 40 humans. That go out and are doing outreach ahead of it, and it's not an issue until it's an issue. But when it does come to where it's time to go, then the folks are ready, and they already have this rapport with them. So it's being proactive. It's not asking the police to do social service work. I think.
But it's also like what you told me on that we had a sidebar conversation. Because Henderson has crisis intervention teams with 2 licensed clinicians that work for us that go out with that team. We have a homeless response team. But when I was talking on the side before the panel, the role sometimes that the law enforcement plays is, they're engaging this community at times, although it could be nonprofits. And how many times does it, as you said, I'm taking some of your credit, just giving you credit. How many times does it take to be stopped or contacted and say, enough is enough, enough is enough. And so sometimes you need that compelling, and all of a sudden they're in custody, and maybe this is my crisis point where I'm going to change things, or maybe I finally got the engagement, or maybe I just get tired of moving along, and that they want to make a difference in their life. But the big thing with that is, are we ready to act at that very moment? Because it's such a small window. So
Dave would know about this better than me, but here's the statistics for Las Vegas, because we have similar to what you said, we have the MORE team. There's the HOT team, there's the LIMA team. There's all kinds of teams out there. The city's efficacy or effective rate is 12% after 19 visits. So you know how expensive it is for a government agency to see somebody 19 times on the street, and only 12% of that time will we actually get them into the van and bring them to services. Highly non-efficient, effective model at all. It's all we got. And so, and we've talked a lot about this.
We have
to bring other
Help's team has more visits per successful intervention, and that's one of my primary challenges. But we're grateful to get a contract with the city to provide more team members. I meet with them every week, and I say the same thing. Every time you go and reach out to a person, especially if they're using fentanyl, this may be their last day alive. It's imperative that you bring them back and you help them get to treatment. So we're looking to have each intervention be successful. We're not going in, we're trying to develop a relationship and on the 17th be successful. We're recognizing that with the increasing overdose rates and this is somebody's kid, this is somebody's son or daughter, that we need to be particularly assertive, compassionate and assertive to get people into detox or into crisis stabilization.
And government's not going to be great at doing that. We're assertive in different ways. That's where we need law enforcement. It's that social service side that can coax somebody into getting treatment in a very effective way that we can't do.
Yeah, and that's one angle of it, but the other, 100% agree, because that is a compelling reason to change. But the other thing you have to try to do, and that's where a lot of these nonprofits or outreach people is, you have to build up trust a little bit to where no one's going to come up, walk over to you and say, oh, hey, come with me, we're going to get you off, it takes a little bit of gaining that trust and establishing a little bit of rapport. And so that's why some of those consistent teams, those consistent, hey, how about today, how about today, how about today? And to where, you do care about me. So that also, in my opinion, makes a difference to help compel them. So again, it's this side of it to where the outreach, this side through the compelling, and then again, still having those services. For once someone finally says yes, we got to act on that.
It's interesting that when I ran Solutions Recovery, which is the biggest treatment center in the state, we had a balance of 50% people in recovery and 50% people I called normies, people not in recovery from a substance. Here at Vegas Stronger, it's closer to 75-25, where most of our team have lived experience. And it's so much different having a person going out with lived experience saying, I used to be here. There is a way, come, it worked for me. Why don't you try this? It makes a guy like Grant be so much more compelling than, I won't pick on somebody who's not in recovery, but somebody who isn't. So it's just the lived experience portion is a really important aspect of certainly this nonprofit.
Those close to the problem have the best solutions, right?
Yeah.
And it looks like the question is not if the police, but when the police.
Right.
So when? Do they need to come out for every time? Do they need to be riding around with a squad? If you look at it, like we looked at the cost of how many times a police officer showing up at a camp just to do nothing. About $230 just for a guy to show up, right? So not if, but when. When is it necessary for the police to come? And then, on the social services side of it, what we run into, issues that we run into is the overpromise, underdeliver problem. Where we're working with folks on the streets and we're like, man, whenever you're ready, man. Whenever you're ready, man. Whenever you're ready, man. And then they're ready and we're like, all right, give me a week, man. Give me a few days, brother. It's gonna take a minute, all right? Stop being so pushy. So we gotta be ready for right now. We need right now services, detox, treatment, whatever that looks like. But we need right now services as well.
I want to do a shout out again to our outreach teams that are here, because when I say 60 people walk in our door every week, about a quarter of those are people who need detox. And there's 7 detoxes in our community right now. And our team, we do screenings, figure out, well, who's your insurance? How old are you? What substance are you using? And they're able to triage and then usually call somebody who used to work with us and say, hey, do you have a better range? And then we do transport to get a person to detox. And with insurance contracts, with companies coming and going, that's an ever-changing constellation of services. So that's one of the expert services that Nicholas's clinical team and that Debbie's outreach team have here at Vegas Stronger, that if a person needs detox, they come in our door and we get them there the same day.
Awesome. All right, the last question.
Last question.
Last question, everybody. What do you think is the single most effective policy in reducing homelessness and drug addiction in our communities, and why?
I don't think it's one policy. I think it's a combination of going back to that civil society. You have the state, the county. They have specific roles to play in making sure that the general welfare of our population is taken care of. Between the state, the city, the county, we have an obligation to create housing options for people. Between the state, county, city, and nonprofit, we have an obligation to create services for people when they need them. So that's why it's so complicated. If it was one policy, it would be done in a day. It's 1,000 policies and it's 100,000 people that all have to come to an agreement on when we prioritize, how we prioritize, how much money it's going to cost, and what do we sacrifice. Because anytime you put money into one bucket, you're sacrificing from another bucket. So if we want to spend more time on housing, which has been the focus of the last couple of years, you sacrifice in other places. Maybe that was the wrong direction. Maybe we shift resources towards prevention, and then on the back end, we still have to worry about housing. There's no one way. It's 1,000 policies and 10,000 people that have to coexist.
Yep.
I'll echo that. Part of the discussion, and so one, to all the outreach people and everyone for what you do, thank you. Because homelessness isn't a number. Every of those numbers is a person. And so caring for those people is never forgotten on any of us in this room and at the City of Henderson. But the policies, growing the awareness, it makes a difference, right? So we hold a fentanyl summit to, risk all fentanyl, so we can gather more information, so we can start putting policies in place and to help address some of those pipelines that could lead to homelessness or just the destruction of an individual or their family. The affordable housing or attainable housing, whatever term you want to use, that could also be policies that help change things. And as my friend said, that there's everything that starts doing makes a difference. I'm a fan of housing. I'm a fan of, to help homelessness, you gotta stop the homelessness. And I believe an overnight stay is not going to be the catalyst for you to change your ways. I'm more of a fan if you have some consistent roof over your head for a consistent amount of time, 30, 60, 90 days. Everything I've read and what I was presented in my previous career show that that model is showing a lot of success. I'm sure there's other evidence-based things that provide success, but a housing first model has shown more success than most on the recidivism of people being able to get out of homelessness. And even go back to what you said, something a little bit, the definition of how do we even qualify, or what constitutes that, who is homeless? Is it someone living in their car, or is it someone on the street? Is there someone, on the verge? And so helping us get all sometimes on the same term also would make a difference. But to start looking at programs like, conversations like this, conversation over fentanyl, so this conversation helps policymakers start focusing on, all right, what's working, what do we need to get there? It does take time through the state, federal, locals, all to start plugging in, but continue to make those dents and continue to make the difference. And so for me, addressing the housing and helping them get to a place where they can have the services brought to them, where they can have the services at a one-stop shop, whatever that looks like, to me is one of the leading things I've found from an evidence point of view to help with homelessness.
Yeah, I echo both. You look at all of it's all, we want these magic bullets, right? Remember the magic bullet called prohibition? How did that go? Remember the magic bullet called deinstitutionalize? We're feeling that right now. And then the magic bullet called the war on drugs. And then the magic bullet called the decriminalization. And all these are a result of overcorrecting and the pendulum swinging from one extreme to the other extreme. The issue, when it comes to this, I believe we all agree, it's a multifaceted gig. There's a bunch of bullets, right? And there's prevention, intervention, treatment, therapeutic community, right? So this is long term. These plans aren't 2 to 4 year plans. These plans solve the problem in 30 to 40 years. What we got to do is put policies in place that last the span of this time and not get changed. We got to stick to the mission. We can all agree that we want to solve the problem, but we disagree on how. You better figure something out quick, right? It's a 30, 40 year plan. It's not going to happen in anybody's term. It's that we all agree, right? What's that? You got to plant the seed of a tree that you'll never sit in the shade of. And that's what we got to look at. So that's it.
Can I ask everybody to put their hands together and express gratitude for Jim, for Brian, for Grant. This was super informative. I hope everyone learns more about what we could do as a community to help address our homelessness crisis. We appreciate everyone's attention. We hope to have more of these forums in the future to keep the dialogue happening so we can effectuate social change in our community. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Marlin, for keeping this conversation going, for promoting it, bringing us all together, and putting life and vigor into the cause, brother.
There's plenty extra food if anybody wants to grab food on the way out. Thank you so much.